Hello, I'm Daisy. I'm a designer and I've been working on 99designs by Vista since 2019. In this video, I'm going to run through some quick strategies to use when being invited to a project and how to communicate with new clients. Being invited to work on a new project is so exciting. When deciding to accept a project, it's super important to be on the same page as your client. Let's look at some key steps you can use during your first conversation with your client. Let's take a closer look. So to find your projects from the homepage of 99designs, expand the Your Work tab and select Projects. From here, I can see that I have one active project that I've been invited to participate in, which is the logo and branding for a sustainable hair salon. So let's have a look at the brief for this project. First of all, click into the Overview tab, and this is where you're going to see the brief that the client's left for you to review. Let's have a look. The name of this project is Logo and Branding for a Sustainable Hair Salon, and the kind of design they're looking for is a logo and social media pack. Straight off the bat, I can see this is a little bit vague, so I'm going to be looking for a bit more information around what they mean by branding, what they mean by social media pack. What does that include? Is that Facebook photos? Is that Instagram stories? Is that just a banner, or is that a series of posts that they want to use in their business? And then the next part is the description. Hello, my name's Elsie. Elsie has said that she is opening a hair salon called Down to Earth in Sydney, Australia. And she's looking for a logo design and some social media images for her business. She's running an organic, no-waste salon, and she wants the logo to feel earthy, clean and modern. And she has talked a little bit about her audience, which is a high-end clientele, mostly women between the ages of 25 to 50 years old. So that's some great information that provides context around the business, a little bit of information around what style and feel of logo Elsie's looking for, and a little bit about who her audience is. As we continue down, we can see where the design is going to be used, and Elsie said social media and printed on merchandise. Once again, this is a little bit vague, so we're going to need to talk to Elsie to get a better understanding of exactly where on social media and what kind of printed merchandise she's planning on using the logo. And then we have some reference files. So we've got a few photos of the salon, and we have 3 inspiration files, which are full of information around what kind of project we're going to be working on. Having a look at the inspiration files, you can see there's 3 slightly different vibes in the inspirational files. One is just a plain word mark, the Aesop. One is more of a pictorial, boho chic style, and one is more of a fine line drawing. There's a lot of differences, so it's going to be interesting to talk a bit more to the client to understand what aspect of the inspiration she really wants to be drawn out in her own logo design. And then further down in the brief, there's a link to any websites and some more of the technical information. So the timeline in this brief has been lifted as 48 hours. So that is a very quick turnaround time for a brand new logo package and social media files. So that's something to think about as well when considering this design, if that timeline is going to work for me. Elsie's budget is $600, which is hard to tell right now if that's going to suit, because once again, we need to find a little bit more information around how many social media tiles there's going to be. So at this point, we're just drawing in as much information as we can to figure out what questions we're going to have to take back to Elsie at the end of the brief. There's a little bit more information here, including links to website and social media, so we can assume that some of the social media posts will be for the website or the links that Elsie's provided. And then there's a little bit more information around here, such as, is Elsie happy for us to show this design on my portfolio, for example? And she is, which is great. And Elsie has also said that she's really open to ideas and keen to see what we can come up with. This is great, but it also can feel overwhelming as a designer, particularly if you don't have a lot of other detailed information around what the client's looking for. This might be a good starting point for you to then ask some more tailored questions for the client to get a more fine-tuned idea of what the look and feel and the concept is that they're looking for their business. So now that I've read the brief, the next thing I'm going to do is get in touch with the client. And there's a few key questions that I want to ask to make sure that I have a thorough understanding of the scope of the project. The first thing is clarifying what exactly is included in the project. The client has said that it's a brand and social media package. So I just want to check, does that mean social media tiles? And if so, how many, for example? The other thing that I want to check is the timeline. It's been listed as 48 hours. So I want to straight away get in touch to see if that's a really firm timeline or if it's a little bit more flexible depending on the project. And the last thing I want to check is the budget. Without really knowing the scope of the project in detail, I can't be 100% sure what's a fair budget, but I just want to check straight away if that's a really firm amount or if it's open to flexibility. If the project is a bit bigger in scope than it may first appear. It's really easy to get in touch with the client once you've been invited to a project. You can simply go down to the bottom of the brief and select send message, or you can jump into the activity tab. We've had a few messages that I'll share with you. First one being my first opportunity to contact the client and introduce myself. This is a very first message that I've had with the client, and it's a very important message because it gives me the time to introduce myself, make a good impression, and set the tone for our collaboration. I love to, first of all, share my enthusiasm for their project. Say thanks for contacting me to participate in this, it sounds awesome. And then let them know that you've read the brief thoroughly, you're aware of what they're asking of you, and that you're looking forward to working with them. Just give them a little bit of a taste of who you are and make sure that you reinforce their confidence in choosing you as a designer. Show that you care, basically. Then I jump into the few things I want to clarify about the brief. So the first thing I talk about is the social media posts. I just ask, what specifically do you need in terms of social media? And it can be really helpful with a client to give an example of the kind of information that you need. Some clients may not be familiar with the different social media platforms or the different aspects of what could be included in a branding package because they're not designers. So it can be really helpful to sort of guide the client a little bit by saying something like, do you need a banner, or do you need a video, or do you need a PDF guidelines or something like that. The next thing I wanted to ask a little bit about is to clarify the references, because there was 3 great references that Elsie attached, but they all were pretty different. And to help in a short-term project like this really narrow down the kind of design that you're going to create, it's a good idea to pinpoint what aspect of the references the client really loves. So I like to ask specifically what aspect of the references does the client like. So the client has the opportunity to say, oh, I loved the color on this one, but I hated the font. And that way you know the font is not the right track, it's the color that's the part of that reference that's relevant. I wanted to ask Elsie a little bit about the timeline. And to sort of justify why I'm asking about the timeline, I just reiterated that getting a logo right is really important. So ideally you want to invest in that time to make sure that we have the opportunity to do revisions and to get it right. So I asked if it's possible to review the timeline, and I gave a little recommendation that I would allow at least a week to complete the project. And then I just ended with, I'm looking forward to hearing more. And that's a great way to show the client that you're interested and you're enthusiastic about their project. You just need a little bit more information. So after that message, Elsie came back with some great information around her project that helped me understand the specifics. From our conversation, I learned that she needed 4 social media posts and that she was a little bit more flexible with her timeline, but she did ask for a little bit more information around why I needed long to complete the project. In general, with clients, my real advice is to be super transparent with your process. And so if you do need to negotiate on an aspect such as time or such as the budget, by really breaking down your process so that they can see the value in your work and where it's going, it's much easier to have that conversation, which can be a little bit tricky. In my message to Elsie just here, you can have a little look at this, you can pause your screen or something. I outlined the steps that I was going to go through to create a logo to help her understand why it might take longer and why it would be worth a longer term investment. Elsie also said she was happy to increase her budget, but she had a limit of 800 Australian dollars. With that in mind, and now knowing the scope of the project, I was ready to create a quote. To access my quote and payment information, I can select the Payments tab, and here I can see the quote that I wrote after my couple of conversations with Elsie. So let's have a look at this quote. So this is the details of the quote that I've written, and if we jump down here, I'm going to select Edit just to show you a little bit of the process around creating your quote. There's 2 different ways you can be paid on 99designs, and it's really up to you to decide what works for you. You can be paid on completion, which means you're not paid any of the money until the whole project is completed, and then you're paid once at the end. Or if you have a project that has lots of different parts that perhaps stretch over a couple of months, or a longer period of time or is a bit more complex, you can also opt to set payment releases, which means that you will get to determine how much you'll be paid for each part of the project. For this project, I've decided to be paid on completion, and that's how I choose to do most of my projects, unless, like I just said, they go for a long period of time and they become a bit complicated. Another really good tip is to break down your quote into very specific elements that detail what the deliverable is that you're going to be giving to the client. This helps them understand where the value is coming from and what different things are costing different amounts. It's also really good for you to help you itemize and break up the work. So I've placed in here the concept development and design of the logo, and then the 4 different social media posts that Elsie needed. Down here you can see the subtotal is 780 Australian dollars, which is just under Elsie's budget of 800. And then once you had your conversation with your client, you're both happy with the budget, you've created your quote, you can just select submit quote and the client will receive a notification that you've submitted a quote for them to review. Just to recap, define the project requirements. Are they fair and achievable? Make a good impression. Be friendly and positive in your conversations. Set fees and expectations. Make sure you're on the same page about the budget and deadline. And say no if the project doesn't suit how you work. Thank you for watching, and I will see you online on 99 Designs.